What's up, Zox fam? Now we have to get into the Animus Reconfigure round 2, okay? This is a really big opportunity because this is going to be 3 opportunities, the first one being free and the other 2 costing Hydra crystals, but 3 potential chances for you to basically shift your account. And maybe for those that might have figured that they break their account, to make some adjustments that is going to make their progression feel a lot smoother, right? Now, the main thing is here is, how do we decide who to reset? So I want to start off with one of the very first things and what I plan on doing, right? Now, the very first thing is actually differentiating the values, right? So when we're talking about comparing, should you restart an SSR or an SR? Now, this is just going to make it easy when you're looking at like who it should be first. It's always going to be SSRs because of 2 reasons. 1, the cost of them is just way more, and 2, perfect lattice is a more scarcer resource, right? So when you're even thinking about the potential return, you're going to get way more back from using a reset on an SSR than you would on an SR. And this is something that you're just going to have to think about. If we ever get these types of events in the future, that's going to be the mindset. What am I resetting from the top that maybe could be split into other things, or can fully invest back into another character of similar caliber that maybe might open up more of the game for me, right? So that's the first thing. Now, when you start trying to narrow down who you should be resetting, it needs to be characters that don't necessarily give you a ton of value in a lot of areas at this point. And I think it's really important to identify at what point in the game you're at, because depending on what point you're at in the game, it could very well also predetermine who you might also reset. Now, let's take, for example, I'm at the point where, like, let's say I had a Shadow Sania, right? Because I know a lot of players were considering resetting her because there's certain areas in the game where she no longer works, right? But the one thing that we have to look at first, right, is where does this character actually work? How many areas in the game, where does this character like do things? How well do they do those things? What's required for them to do those things, etc. Okay? So when we're looking at things like Hell Terramaton, and we go over to, let's say even Inferno, right? And we look at some of the highest clear comps, right? We see Shadow Sania. But what is the thing that is basically making up the team for this Shadow Sania to work, right? Shadow Sania typically on average needs to have her max on her skill 1 because that's directly affecting her passive. But one of the things that you'll notice with a lot of these teams is that she's being ran with a Lily, right? And the reason why that is because Lily is going to make it much easier for the rotation. And that's one of the biggest things about like having a character like, say, Lily, is that a lot of these pairings, a lot of the times, is a character does one thing to enable the other character to do their job more efficiently. And this is why I always say that this game is about pairings. It's not just so much about what that individual character can do, but it's also who do they work well with. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to get you guys to understand. Who does that character work well with? So you can see Shadow Sania paired up with the Lily here, but is that always the case? Is she paired up with anyone else? Usually it's Fangus. If we go over to the shells, you can see even in like things like Nico Nana, we go all the way to Inferno, you're gonna see that same combo, right? That Shadow Sania, Fangus, and Lily, right? Even the Valerian being in there because she's just generally good for sustain. But then Sharon, that's a character that Dot doesn't work on because she is a Dot boss. Then you have Shadow Flame Hoyan. You'll see again that same combination, Shadow Flame, Shadow Sania and Fangus. You'll see the Lily, Shadow Sania, right? So this is just kind of giving you an idea of, okay, who does this character potentially pair well with? And again, just how can I make a better decision for my account? So that's that. And then this isn't even including like things like Ember Trek, Anasync Echoes, where again, characters like Shadow Sania has more value the higher up she goes because enemies in their HP values get higher. So the higher the HP value, the more damage that the dots that she does, which makes her more efficient at the endgame spectrum, right? So if you're at that point where you're starting to cross over into that area, that might not necessarily be one of the better resets for you, right? Now, I would say, like, for example, if we're looking at, say, a character like, let's say the Shiada, right? Now, where exactly can you use her? So again, doing the same thing, you can go into different areas of the game and you can try to predetermine, okay, how many areas in this game am I going to be using this character? I feel like, again, Shiada is an amazing character. She still works very well and she's still able to clear the areas where there were even adjustments made. But again, for me, I would also be looking at how many other areas can I use this character? And so that's what ultimately would be a thing that you might say, well, you know what? Instead of me going with Shiada, I just pulled a Messiah. So let me take those resources and actually dump them into my Messiah. I'll be able to get some usage out of him on not only my Doki Doki, but I can use him in my Terramatan team. I can use him in PvP. I can use him in Infinity Train, etc. Right? So there's so many different things that you can do. Now, am I like saying that you need to reset Shiada? No. What I'm actually saying is that if there's something that gives you more spread value, then that would be potentially a reset choice. Now, again, from there, how do we feel about supports, right? And this is the biggest thing, is that like for the most part, when it comes down to most characters, I don't really recommend like for the lower rarities, like really resetting those unless, like I said before, you don't have any other options. I would say like one scenario where you could maybe do something maybe for the EXP if you took her further, which I don't see a lot of players doing that. Like if you have a Dyna Kloss, I've had some people ask that, like, should I reset my Dyna because I have Kloss now? No, I think that you would still get value out of a character like Dyna even though you have Kloss. And this is just simply because you're going to have different scenarios where even with, granted, the attribute like differences and stuff like that, Kloss is still a unit that excels in some of those areas. But if at any point you ever find yourself needing, you know, that stack of like the vulnerability with the erosion, it gives you way more debuff stacks too. So there's some scenarios where Dyna might work a little bit better if you're built into, say, maybe Momentum, which is a little bit more endgame, versus with Kloss. And even just still in terms of raw investment, they have two different resources, right? So that's why I'm not really so like, I got to get rid of that one because I have this one now, really for that fact, right? Now, granted, if you feel like you don't ever use them or plan on using them, then there's that. But I feel like, again, that's just another character for the respective attribute. Remember, we have attribute specific content that's going to be able to help you out, right? So that's why you don't want to isolate yourself necessarily just having one character fitting a role if you can help it, right? So with that being the case, what exactly am I doing? How am I going to be shifting my account? What reset choices do I plan on making? And I feel like it's like really going to boil down to a couple of different things here, because for me personally, some of the characters I've 6-starred, like my Dating, I got Ramoka, I have Leon. We just did Hoden, which we're gonna have a video, if not already up for him soon. Then Heinrich. These are some of my initial 6-stars. And then of course I got a ton of 5-stars that I got worked up on the account, and just ultimately try to decide who I want to 6-star next. But I think the biggest thing for me is just trying to open up my account more. Now I do have some other picks here that would actually be really, really good for me to work on, like my Messiah, or even I have Lily, right? And I would definitely say, like, if I really was like, you know, to use the reset, I probably would reset my Heinrich and actually leave him at 5-star, and then give those mats to another character to take them up to 6-star. So probably characters like my Lily for her rotation stuff. I would definitely consider, again, like my Messiah, so I could have a light attribute character for DPS, and just kind of giving me that neutrality there. But it just really, again, just all depends on how I kind of feel after I do some of the other content grind that I need to do. And then I'm going to basically think about resetting my Leon, not because I'm trying to actually like take her back down to 0 and use her mats on someone else. I'm going to still restart her back up, but I might actually take the Lattice out of her. I think that that's what I might do, so I can actually dump that into someone else, because I don't think I necessarily need to have the Lattice in her. I think using her as is still great. And even for what it's worth, the turn meter still effect thing was really the real reason why I was pushing this as much as I was before. But since they have adjusted that, and this was from the beta, it now makes more sense to just like fixate more on just trying to scale her damage just from her gear, her modules, etc., the pet, etc. And then maybe giving that to a character that can get more raw damage, so that I'm not so fixated on not having that full effect, right? And then that, again, that's 4 lattice that could go, or 3 lattice, sorry, that can go into another character to give them their max potential and allowing them to be able to perform a lot better. So those lattices I might actually put into my Lily. I might actually put into my Messiah as well. So it just all kind of depends on really how things kind of pan out. But those are like some of the choices that I'm like really looking at right now. I would say with everything else, it's just kind of like 5-star investment and slowly but surely building them up with gear and stuff like that. And I think the other thing is too, is that you want to, don't feel like you got to work on so many projects at once. That's why I feel like the more that I can like kind of alleviate that for myself and make it more open, it'll just make the process a lot easier. So yeah, guys, I feel like when it comes down to the reset, really honest, you can reset whoever you want, right? I think that that's just a matter of the fact, but I definitely will say take this for what it's worth. We don't know how many more times we'll be getting this, how regular it'll even be, or if it's going to continue to be open like this to where you can reset any single character that you have in the game. I actually would love to see them keep it like that. That would be really cool, especially if we had it in between different events. I mean, does it need to be up all the time? It would be nice, but realistically, I think we have to remember this game is super fresh. It's definitely not normal for games to have like resets that are just usable all day, all the time, especially when you have a game that's super, super young. I will say, though, what I would like to see is maybe them rotating events like the Animus Reconfigure in those windows where they're actually resetting characters, or not even resetting characters, but they're balancing and, buffing, nerfing, whatever it may be in between the off seasons. I think that would actually be really nice for players that have an opportunity to just kind of come out of those things like, hey, this got nerfed significantly. We can make that adjustment and we can actually, shift into the next thing, right? I think that would actually be really nice. And it would also keep the game kind of fair in the sense of, people not having the ability to just change whatever they want whenever they want. I think that that's something that's kind of, it's kind of one of those things where you want to still have features like this be a luxury, but you want it to also still be accessible when it is necessary. So that's basically my take on that. I hope that, again, this was able to give you guys some more insight on who you might want to go and pick. I feel like, again, it varies from account to account. We will be streaming, though, so if not already have streamed, make sure you guys come through twitch.tv/Zoxaskun. The game's going into maintenance now. So that's basically that. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.